Hey guys and gals, have you ever imagined yourself in the shoes of a socially awkward high school student who finds himself dating a girl with absolutely no filter? Well, get ready to dive into the hilarious world of My Girlfriend is Sho-bitch. In this wacky romantic comedy, you'll follow the adventures of Haruka, a guy who thought he knew everything about relationships until he met Akiho, his unapologetically blunt and shamelessly honest girlfriend. We start our anime with the protagonist dreaming that he's alone with a girl named Kosaka and she wants to show him what she has up her skirt. Suddenly, the boy wakes up and we realize that he is in class. His name is Haruka Shinozaki. He has been in love with the class representative for some time now, who is the same girl from his dream, so he makes an appointment with her after school to declare his love for her. He is surprised because the beautiful girl replies that if he doesn't mind accepting her, as she is then, she will do her best to be her girlfriend. And that means she will study all the basic positions. Holy, but what a special girl. Later, Haru is preparing to return home when suddenly her childhood friend Shizuku Ariyama surprises him from behind and tells him that he will accompany him home. As if that were not enough, the little sister, Kaneda, also appears and tells them that she will join them. The next day, our protagonist is thinking about how to ask his new girlfriend what she likes, but when she arrives, she rather asks him what his sexual fetishes are. Shortly after, when he tries to help her carry some books, she thinks that he probably likes being a bondage slave. When it's break time, our boys meet up to eat together. When he tries to help her carry some books, she thinks when Haru asks her for a photo, she says that she's already taken several in exciting positions. As a good boy, he tells her that he only needs a photo of her face, so she sends him an edited photo in which it seems that surprises have just rained down on him. Later in class, Kosaka overhears a couple of girls complaining about love, so she advises them that there are only two ways for a woman to win over a man. The first is to finish all of her sentences saying meow, and the second is not to wear pants and show it to the face of the person concerned. The girls obviously miss each other and whisper to each other that she's a very weird girl. Our star student leaves a bit crestfallen and thinks her new boyfriend may also consider her a freak. But then she runs into him in a hallway and he friendly asks her to walk home together, which she is delighted with. As they walk, Haru removes a piece of garbage from her hair. Rubbing against her ear makes her nervous, and although he wants to take advantage of the moment, she coldly replies that it's over, but that she requests that he recreate it again. But what a strange girl. Sometime later, we see that Shizuku is bothering Haru, and just at that moment, the girlfriend arrives. Our boy worries that she is going to be jealous, but it seems that he is taking all the inciting phrases of the supposed friend seriously. After school, the crazy woman proposes that they go to an arcade to have fun and make peace. Obviously, this was a clever plan. Well, he immediately forces them to go into a photo booth where the result is funny. Shizuku ends up telling them that they pay too much attention to his presence because their relationship isn't really intense. This obviously affects our dear Kosaka, so the next day she meets her boyfriend in the gym and receives him disguised as a sexist. Our poor boy ends up explaining to him that he shouldn't let himself be pressured by others, and he repeats for the umpteenth time that he is not a man. In the end, she decides to affectionately call him Haru, something that for the Japanese means intimacy, for which our protagonist ends up delighted. After the credits, we hear the voices of the protagonists. Apparently, they have to take shelter from a heavy rain, and the only place they have left is a hotel for couples, so they decide to enter despite Haru's doubts. It is another day, and it is raining. Our protagonists are deciding what to do to return to their homes. She mentions that she read that if her shirt gets wet, it would be convenient for him, but then they see another couple who is walking under an umbrella. Fortunately, Haru brings an umbrella in her backpack. However, things get complicated because it seems that she is uncomfortable with such discomfort. And in the end, they decide it is better to run home. Later, when our main character is already at home, he decides to send a message to his girlfriend to see how she is, because he is worried that she will catch a cold from getting wet. Before I can finish sending it, the little sister appears as always with her cat hat. She wants to know who is the name that appears on the cell phone, and to her misfortune, her brother tells her that it is the name of his girlfriend, so the little girl almost goes crazy with jealousy. The next day at school, the sister can't cope with her curiosity and goes outside Haru's classroom, and just then Kosaka arrives, but since Kaneda is so pretty, she can't help but start yelling about all the things she does with her brother, which of course are immediately misunderstood. At lunchtime, our protagonist explains to his girlfriend that it was all a misunderstanding. But of course, things get complicated when Kaneda shows up and wants to steal her brother just for her. In the end, she ends up pushing Kosaka, which makes her realize that she was being too aggressive and ends up making peace with her new sister-in-law. Later, we find out that the school cleaning week is going to start, and our dear class representative inspires everyone to do a good job. As always, Kosaka is thinking of quite different things, like what to do if someone drops a blow-up doll. Then she herself listens to some students say that they are going to throw away some old magazines because they prefer the new ones, and one of them jokes that this is the reason why his friend is always changing girlfriends. This terrifies our girl a bit, so she asks Haru to please always take care of her belongings. In another scene, we see that our beloved protagonist sees a commercial about how a dish can win a man's heart, so she decides to make her boyfriend a home-cooked lunch. At lunchtime, we see that the two are sitting in their usual place. She prepared something, but it is terrible. Because her cooking skills are very bad, at that moment, Shizuku arrives and takes out her lunch that looks amazing and delicious. Immediately, Kosaka asks her to please be her teacher because she needs to learn to cook, to which she gladly accepts. Then we see the three of them at the house of the new cooking teacher, who is teaching them how to make a meat stew, obviously between pure jokes and ill-thought-out situations. When they finish eating the stew, which was a complete success, our boys must return home, but it has started to rain. Fortunately, this time she agrees to walk under the umbrella and the two walk very comfortably in the rain. After the credits, we return to the same scene where our dear boys entered a hotel for couples, and Haru doesn't know what to do as he is very embarrassed to meet other couples, while she sounds very calm and asks which room they should choose. Kosaka's house, where she is explaining to her father that her boyfriend will be coming in 40 minutes. The man is very nervous. Well, he doesn't like it very much since it's the first time it's happened here. We can see that our dear class representative acts the same at home as at school, and her mother apparently is also quite strange because she says she's preparing something for the guests while handling a strange sticky substance. When Haru arrives at his girlfriend's house, he knocks on the door, and his mother-in-law, Fuyuma, is the one who opens it. However, she is so young that he mistakes her for his daughter. Misunderstandings begin immediately because the lady talks about entertaining the young man in a very suspicious way, and later, when they are inside, she only brings up uncomfortable conversations such as family planning or how many condoms the boy is bringing. In order to break the tense atmosphere, our boy decides to ask him about the photo album that is next to the table where they are sitting. The album has pictures of Kosaka as a child, but even there we can see that she was already reading an adult book. But how early? Meanwhile, the father watches them from outside and remembers how his wife was always in charge of their daughter's education. The flashbacks are crazy because we see how when she was a girl of just 1 year she was going to cry because a paper to draw broke, but Fuyumi arrives and tells her not to cry, that when her hymen breaks she will cry. What? And even worse, when the calf was eating and it got all muddy. The mother makes references to what she should say when she grows up when it's all beaten up. That mom is crazy. Back in the present, Kosaka has already returned home and asks his dad what he is doing snooping outside. Inside, the mother thinks that the boy is hitting on her, and when Kosaka enters the house and says that she brought Oyakoden, the mother says that surely what she wants is to be with mother and daughter, to which the girl thinks that not only he is a lover of lolis, but now he has another In the end, they all eat together, and the boy thanks them for their hospitality, but not before getting along with the father, who is obviously in the same situation. As the young people leave, the parents remember how beautiful it was to have Akiho and how her mother has worked hard to educate her so that she can have a loving home. Sometime later, we see that the father arrives and finds Akiho and her mother talking because she will have her first date with Haru. Obviously, the mother tells him to swallow it all, no matter if it is bitter. The father says that it is too soon to talk about it, so the advice ends in that he better investigate well. Later, already on the date, the young people go to the movies where the woman takes the opportunity to take note of the romantic scenes. At the end of the date, she asks if the boy had a good time, but then she realizes that he did nothing to investigate all the time. Fortunately, the situation is saved when he asks her to go see the cherry trees next Sunday. The next day at school, our protagonist almost fainted because she didn't sleep all night because she was thinking about her next appointment on Sunday. The worst thing is that since she is very weak, she falls to her knees on the ground in front of Haru and begins to make gestures while coughing, so he has no choice but to take her running to the infirmary. Since she has a fever, they call her mother, and of course, she can't drink water, and a rather lewd scene is created just when the mother-in-law arrives, who also thinks that it is another tactic of the boy to seduce them both. Time passes, and we arrive at Sunday, where we can appreciate that our beloved protagonist has already recovered, and the two young people rush to see the cherry trees. To his misfortune, when the rain of the last days came, it made the leaves of the cherry trees fall. Since the date was ruined, the girl is that she wants to die, but for her good luck, our main character tells her that it doesn't matter, that they can come next year. Hearing this, she gets very excited and is very happy to think that their relationship can be so deep. After the credits, we hear the boys again, who this time have already arrived with the receptionist at the hotel. She asks them if they want to stay for a while or spend the whole night, to which Kosaka answers if they want to spend the whole night. Our protagonist is surprised by the answer and ends up thinking that she only chose that option because the rain was not going to stop. We start the chapter with a very strange scene in which two girls who seem to be in a semi-intimate relationship are saying goodbye. The long-haired sister is seen in a limo and thinks to herself that she is excited to see what new friends she will make at school. Already inside the classroom of our protagonists, we see that the student is introduced as Rina Saijo, who introduces herself as a normal girl until she says that her hobby is rubbing the hairy males. Moments later, the group representative approaches with the new girl to introduce herself. The latter is surprised that nobody likes rubbing against dogs because apparently that's what she meant with furry males. The new student begins to explain where she comes from, an all-female academy, so she is used to having innuendos and relationships only between girls. Moments later, the protagonists are with her trying to explain why they are a couple. Well, the new one finds a relationship between a man and a woman very strange. At the end of the day, what the new woman wants is to learn to live in her new environment. Unfortunately, she is used to flirting too much with women, and in fact, at that moment, she is doing it with Kosaka. The boys recommend that she also seek information with a guy, so they take her to the nurse who is known for being the adult of the teachers. In the cafeteria, the girls start arguing which lunch number they want, but the discussion ends up flirting about who has the biggest bust. Later, Rina wants to continue learning about how to have a true friendship with a man, so our protagonists advise her to talk casually, for example, about music. Later, the new one asks the boy to accompany her to the bathroom, which is not possible. Just at that moment, Shizuku arrives and introduces herself as the lover, to which the new one ironically says that she would love to be one too. At the end of the day, when Rina is praising our young people for having been so good to her, she asks them if they can be her friends, to which they both answer yes with great pleasure. When saying goodbye, the new one kisses both of them on the cheek, which in Japan is seen as an act of too much intimacy, for which they are both a bit overwhelmed. Even Kosaka believes that the act must return, but as a kiss on the mouth. On another day at school, Rina is sad because a friend from her previous school called her to end their relationship. Kosaka tells her not to worry because they are now great friends. So just when Haru thought things were at peace, the new one opens her girlfriend's blouse. Moments later, Reina mentions that at night her body was licked by two machos, for which the entire room reacts in astonishment, until the protagonist explains that he is referring to his dogs. Since the conversation turns to walking their pets, the boys end up deciding instead of walking her dogs, it would be better if they all go to the zoo together and even invite Shizuku. The youngsters arrive at the zoo and everyone is very happy. Kosaka then explains that since she was little, her mom was very conscientious in explaining mating rituals to her. Mentions her to her mother transports us to the scene in their own house where the adult couple talks about how fast their daughter has grown and ends up deciding that they should go to the zoo to have a good time. Back with the boys, we see that there is a contest to name a baby panda. Obviously, Reina only thinks of names related to you-know-what. When our protagonist says that they could go to a rest area, his girlfriend imagines that he means touching small children. The one who can pet rabbits and other animals, Rina appears touching a girl, to which our boy tells her that those are not the animals he should pet. Finally, when they go to see a puppy, they all start talking about who will be bigger, if the pet or Haru. The conversation does not end there. In the end, it seems that he became the most talked about animal in the zoo. Poor. As if that were not enough, now more people are going to arrive at the zoo. First, we see the sister, Kana, who arrives with her friend called Misaki. The latter apparently is also always relating everything to more intimate things. In this case, her nickname Sakiko, with her breath. Then we see Haru's in-laws arrive and go to see the elephant with its obvious references to how big it is. Then they go to see the baby panda, who sucks a lot from the nipple. And finally, a baboon, where they also Kana and company were talking about their strong reproductive abilities. In the end, the dad hurts his ankle and Fuyumi has to help him walk, which reminds him that the same thing happened when they were young and how she has always been very candid and good to him. Thus ends the day at the zoo, and Rina leaves together with Shizuku, who knows where, leaving our protagonists alone to walk home. After the credits, just as the boys were about to hold hands, the in-laws enter the scene. The mother then explains that her husband got hurt and they should find a place to rest. And just then, everyone realizes that they are in front of a hotel for couples, haha. And as always, we go straight to the continuation of the pure audio scene in the hotel. There, the boys are already looking for room 301, which is the one they rented. She tells them how to gently push the key all the way in, gently turn it until O. The door opens. Haha. Another day at school, Shizuku says that she bought some animal ears as headbands, so she puts on doggy ones and gives Kosaka kitten ones. Immediately, the latter approaches the boy's crotch and says, meow. Rina, who tells the others that she finally bought a cell phone right away, her plans are to send sex messages, and she also takes the opportunity to call Kosaka, even though she's in front of her to ask what color her pants are. What does he bring today? Then she asks our guy to take a picture together. He explains how selfies work and how you can add filters to it. Unfortunately, she gets very happy and starts yelling the whole school that she took a photo with a facial, which can obviously be misinterpreted. To finish this part, the girls begin to talk about how the humidity can damage their hair, Haru mentions that it is seen that it is very difficult to be a girl because of all that it implies, and Rina answers that yes, for example, today's humidity may bring your hair all tousled, but hey, not the hair on your head. Later, while they are in the corridor of the school, Kosaka tells her boyfriend that she just found out that when she raises her chin, it is a very romantic moment, of course. The boy likes the idea very much since he means that he takes his face with his hand to kiss it. She is actually thinking in a very different gesture, so things do not get worse. On the contrary, she mentions that she also heard that a good girlfriend knows what her boyfriend is thinking without having to use words for what he asks, that I no longer speak to him for today. This causes her to make a lot of her face at Haru, who is embarrassed and looks away. Incredibly, what she thinks is that there is surely a ghost of a girl who is eating a banana, and that is why the boy is ashamed and looks the other way. But what imagination. In the later classes, we can see that Kosaka is trying his best to try to figure out what the boy needs, and surprisingly, though, they are really succeeding. However, the problem is that the people nearby immediately think he is exploding. To the poor girl, things continue like this until they meet Rina and Shizuku. The former tries to enter the game so that Kosaka can guess what she feels, and the latter says that she can guess what our protagonist is thinking. In the end, the three of them begin to try to guess what the boy needs, and obviously it results in things that have nothing to do with it. Since Rina says that some wax to depilate, Shizuku wants to give him a picture of her, and his girlfriend ends up saying to forgive him, for it is impossible for him to summon a ghost of a little girl. When the classes are over, Kosaka goes to a meeting where all the representatives of their respective classes are. There we meet for the first time the student committee president, Sori Igarashi, as well as the representative of another class named Seo Shizumori, who always has bangs in her eyes. At the meeting, our protagonist runs amok and only makes suggestions such as that the students can bring adult magazines and similar things, which the president of the committee dislikes. But she can do little when everyone else begins to accede to their requests and believe that the president herself also does dirty things after class. In another scene, Kosaka hiccups and a misunderstanding ends in Shizuku hiding to spy on them and scare them away so that the hiccups go away. He realizes that it was all a misunderstanding. A brief scene also reminds us that the nurse spends her time eating sausages in the morning at noon and also sausages at night. In the last scene of the chapter, we see Kana, who is with her friend buying things to eat in the little store. Everything gets complicated when they mistakenly put some chocolate-flavored condoms in the snack area. Needless to say that the two end up buying exactly that box, and Sekiko even brags to the one at the cash register that his mouth is already watering. After the final credits, we again hear the voices of the protagonists in the couple's hotel. The young people have already entered the room, and it goes without saying that our hero is extremely nervous at first. He sees a vending machine, but he realizes that it is for condoms. Then he sees the refrigerator, but is also full of energy drinks. So he finally tells him to Kosaka that he should take a bath, but after hearing his own words, he gets even more nervous. We start another chapter, and it is already summer. When our protagonists arrive at school, we see that there is a boy who has already returned. His name is Sia Hashikawa, and he is extremely popular with all the girls. Haru gets nervous thinking that this popular boy could do something, and just when he leaves the bathroom, he sees that his girlfriend and the aforementioned are talking in a very casual and intimate way in the corridor. The poor thing starts to go crazy, and right there he arrives Shizuku, so he gets even crazier and tells her how much she would let herself be her friend in order to understand how much her girlfriend could be with Saya. Before things get more chaotic, Rina arrives but doesn't help at all because she says that when you're a friend, the thing hasn't entered yet, but when you're already a very good friend, the whole thing has to enter. Our poor boy can't take it anymore and runs off to ask the other two if they're good friends or what's going on. It turns out that in reality, the redhead doesn't have many male friends. Well, the others see him with envious eyes, so he only approached Kosaka to get closer to him. Haru replies that he's happy, and that of course he could be friends with such a normal boy. Apparently, he's the only one who hasn't realized that what Sia likes is playing with other boys. Later, we see that the Tanabata festival has arrived, in which the wishes of the young are hung from a bamboo tree. Everyone wants things according to themselves. For example, Shizuku wants to make a B-cup on the bust, Reina wants to have a much deeper friendship with girls, and Haru wants to be able to continue with his girlfriend. Saya also appears, and of course the references to the stars and the Milky Way come out in an unconventional way. Well, let's stay. Later, it is time for sports class, and the teacher announces that tomorrow will be the school softball tournament, so everyone should do their best. Things go a bit upside down when our hero thinks that he must improve a lot in order to stand out in the match and thus make his girl proud. But at that moment, Saya sees him and offers to train him in how to grip the bat and balls. The innocent of our boy gladly agrees, so later when Kosaka is walking towards the sports equipment warehouse, he hears the voices of those two right in a darkest corridor. The girl almost of shock, and even worse, Haru wants to keep the surprise, so he decides not to tell her what they were doing until tomorrow. The long-awaited day arrives and the bride is extremely worried about what she sets out to look for. On his side, he is only talking with Rina and Shizuku, as well as with Kana, who also arrives. At the time of the game, our boy gets very nervous, and the only thing he manages to achieve is pure fouls, one after the other, and in fact, in his last opportunity, he hits in such a way that the ball hits Suya directly in the groin. The scene becomes very funny because once again, poor Kosaka ends up seeing her boyfriend on his knees in front of the other guy. After the match, she explains everything and things are more or less resolved, as she ends up saying that there is no problem, as while he was handling the stick, he was thinking about her. After the credits, we again hear their voices inside the hotel for couples. Now Kosaka is taking a bath and the boy begins to think, why does he also wash his hair, and then why does he take so long washing his whole body? Of course, when she comes out, the boy is already all red and embarrassed. We begin with our beloved couple who are walking quietly in the park when they realize that there is a lost puppy. The pet turns out to be very strange because it acts in a perverted way and even wants to lick it in a very strange way. Of course, at the end, the owner, who turns out to be Rina, arrives. The boys realize that there is an advertisement posted in which it is reported that there will be a 2-day and 1-night camp. Kosaka immediately says that it is a very important moment since it can be provided for the boys to do you know what to the girls. Later, the student council president is disappointed that no one really cares much about her leadership. But in the end, the respective class representatives help her feel better. Already in the camp, things start to get interesting. Of course, Saya is attentive to everything that happens to Haru and the references to the fact that mosquitoes can suck you cannot be avoided. The reality is that it doesn't happen much beyond the fact that the little animals want to eat Saya's mushroom and that Rina pours an energy drink into the food of her bodyguards. Back at school, both Shizuku and Kana are sad and miss our boy. On the other hand, Kosaka's parents are having tea very peacefully when suddenly the father begins to think that his little girl will one day get married and leave home. This makes a teardrop in his wife. She immediately replies not to worry, she's satisfied with the size of her you-know-what. Haha. Back at the camp, Meg has already fallen and all the classes are going to carry out the courage activity that means going into the forest and enduring the scares that other students give them. In this case, Saya is going to be one of those who scare the others. Immediately, our dear girl grabs Haru's arm and the two start walking. A few steps later, he detects that there is someone in the bushes, and it is nothing more and nothing less than Shizu, the representative of another class. This girl really didn't want to scare them, and we realize that she's a person who likes to see how others do their little things, so she even asks them to do something in front of her. The real horror happens when Sella swings from the trees half naked and ends up falling with a package on our protagonist's face. After this, the classic scene occurs where all the girls are taking a bath before bedtime and discussing all the activities they could do with them, except for Sari, who of course is alarmed by all this information. Later, when several of the girls are already asleep, Haru arrives for his girlfriend and asks him to accompany her into the dark of the forest. Of course, she fervently believes that it is the time when everything will happen and she is more than willing to fulfill her role, but of course, all our boy wanted to do was take her to a place with a nice view, so she's very touched. After the credits, we hear our boys in the hotel again, and Haru has just come out of the bath, so Kosaka tells her that it is her duty to dry in with a maid costume, to which she replies that it is not necessary, normal clothes are fine, so she ends up putting on only a bathrobe. To this, our boy thinks that this is probably the most dangerous outfit in his situation. We start the chapter with Sori, who is walking through the corridors and complains that the environment is too hot after the camping trip. Of course, what he plans to do is find a couple so he can report them. Well, in his opinion, he should keep the school environment pure. Seconds later, the girl sees a couple leaving her room, so she enters and begins to think that such disrespect is not possible, and that she opens a locker and meets more or less than Shizu, who of course she saw from darkness as the previous couple did everything. Before Sori can scold her, people are heard coming, for which the voyeur puts the president with her inside the locker. Those who arrive were Haru and his little sister, but they immediately have an accident in which the milk explodes in Kana's face. The problem is that from the locker things are not clear, and of course they imagine the worst. Haru ends up opening said locker to look for a tissue with which to clean up the mess and finds the girls in a highly compromising position. Sori explodes and tells him that it is the worst, that how can he be doing that? He tells her that there is no problem. Well, that's not his little sister, so things end up even worse. Later on, Sori cannot let things continue like this, so she confronts our protagonists to her misfortune. What she doesn't know is that her skirt got into her belt, so she is showing her pants from behind. Haru tries to explain what is happening in a casual way, but they ignore him until Kosaka, after having misinterpreted everything and actually congratulating her for being such a ends up helping to clarify the situation, as Sori no longer thinks badly of her. In another scene, we see that Kosaka is changing in the locker room after her swimming class, and we hear her whisper in fear that what she feared the most has finally happened. Moments later, we find out what he's talking about. He forgot his pants Her plan is simple: go get her gym clothes from her locker. But to her bad luck, Haru just arrives and invites her to join him for breakfast. The poor girl is dragged to one event after another with nothing under her skirt. In the end, they come to a clearing where Haru tells her that he's glad she's doing things she's not used to. The girl is happy and the boy's dream comes true as she plans to lift her skirt to show that she can do unusual things. Our good boy stops her and tells her it's not necessary and all goes well. In gym class, everyone is doing their best. Of course, Kosaka is very flexible and comments that the important thing in a boy is not his flexibility, but how tough he is. Rina gets trapped in the locker with our protagonists, but her bodyguards rescue them, just when they were in a compromising position for walking in the dark. After the credits, we continue with the story of the hotel, where our boy complains that it's cold, and of course his girlfriend tells him to warm up together in bed. She says not to worry because she feels comfortable. We start this chapter with our protagonist who is in the mall and is talking to his beloved girlfriend. To his bad luck, there's bad news. Well, Kosaka's father hurt his back and they're going to have to take him to the hospital. According to this, it was because at night he was too keen on his duties as a husband. The girl apologizes, but he mentions that there is no problem and that he hopes everything goes well. When it seemed that he was going to be alone in the mall, Shizuku appears. So the two of them will spend the rest of the afternoon together. The so-called older sister is there because she just finished a dinner with her family, so she asks to go shopping with her. Of course, when it's time to change her clothes, she plays various pranks on Haru, but she ends up with the worst when a manager tells her that her swimsuit with a glass is ready. The boys eat together, and when it seems that it's time for everyone to go home, Shizuku says, "Why don't you go have dinner with her since her parents aren't home?" and she already knows what that means. Of course, the only thing this young man thinks about is that the poor thing is going to be alone, so in the end he agrees to accompany her. Things get crazy when the hostess says she's going upstairs to change to make herself more comfortable and make dinner, but suddenly she yells from upstairs. When running up, the girl appears handcuffed. Of course, he thought it was a robbery, but of course not. She was simply playing with the handcuffs and lost the key. Although the young man is not very happy, he has no choice but to help her do everything. So he makes her dinner and even carries her to her bed. With everything, and that he is a saint there, he himself is ashamed for a second because we already know how suggestive the other is. In the end, she thanks him for all his help and reminds him of when they were kids and he comforted her. The key in the end was always in her pocket. The next day at school, Kosaka is thinking about how to make up for the appointment she missed yesterday with her dear boyfriend. But in that, she hears her voice and Shizuko's in the hallway. The two are talking about a school activity in which they will have to cook a traditional lunch. Since the other cooks very well, the girlfriend becomes very jealous because in the next scene, where all the students are already cooking, she becomes very enthusiastic and starts cooking. Of course, things go wrong and burn, and just when Sayo is holding Haru in a very useful way, she began to catch fire in the frying pan, but she didn't even count seriously because she literally wanted that they were abusing her boyfriend. When the food was ready, Rina arrives and gladly tries the dish. However, the poor thing literally almost died. Heartbroken, Kosaka doesn't know what to do, but our young hero arrives and calmly explains that there is no problem, that he is very happy that she wants to take care of him, but she doesn't have to worry because he must also contribute and do his best. From a distance, we see how Shizuku had made an extra lunch, but since she heard them saying all that and being very cute, she better retires so as not to interrupt them. In the scene after the credits, we see the older sister and the girlfriend arguing about how many used handkerchiefs the protagonist has in his boat when he arrives and tells them not to think about those things. He even invites them to his room, so they end up thinking the worst. Of course, they are also very flattered. Lastly, in our traditional scene inside the hotel for couples, we hear that Haru is the next thing nervous because he's already in bed with his girl just when he thought something would happen. Then we hear that the other one has already fallen asleep. He ends up saying that he's relieved, but at the same time a little disappointed. We start the last chapter of the season with which Haru is dreaming that he has a date with his girl. The problem is that he is already acting completely normal. That is to say, he talks like a girl, behaves like a girl, and even at the end he tells her that it's okay to give him a kiss. Although he's very happy, he has a strange feeling that doesn't suit him, and suddenly he wakes up and realizes that it was all a dream and accepts that even though the real Kosaka is different, he really loves her. Later we see them studying because the exams will be in just 3 days. Kosaka helps him with the Japanese syllabus and tells him that if they change the situations for perverted scenes as he likes them, there will be no problem for him to understand. Then our young man meets Suya, and although he asks him to help him study, he tells him that his only specialization is actually filling in holes, which even makes his girlfriend shudder. Rina is also going to help 2 other students, and of course, everything indicates that she is going to do more than just help them. In the end, the little sister appears with her friend, and the two ask Haru to help them study. The friend blushes and begins to imagine things and no longer hears that what the other one wants is help on the subject of insemination, by which upon returning to reality realizes the terrible shame. Later, we see Sakika, who works at an ice cream parlor. Shizuka arrives and starts crying with happiness because they ask her how big she wants her ice cream cup. Saya arrives later and asks for a lollipop. However, they tell him that there is a 2-for-1 offer, so he gets very excited at the possibility that he can have a lollipop in each hand. Next, Kosaka arrives, who asks for 2 scoops of ice cream, a banana in the middle and condensed milk on top. The poor worker thinks that she is the one who is wrong and serves her what she asked for without much problem. However, she realizes that Kosaka's dear girlfriend, he immediately starts taking suggestive selfies with the ice cream. The last to arrive is Haru, who becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back. Well, he says he wants one of those round things that you have to squeeze and it comes out like milk. The worker can't take it anymore and almost faints, like he was just talking of the fashionable dessert. Another day at school, classes have finished and our boy fell asleep on the bench. Kosaka arrives, and since he can't wake him up, he approaches him and tries to fix his hair. At that moment, he wakes up, turns around, and sees her supposedly asleep, so he feels the same desire to touch her hair, and she can't help but moan, so he realizes that she was actually awake. In the end, she was not upset, but rather she was not satisfied that he could have touched her and she, not him, because of what she approaches, although our young man thought that he was going to kiss him. All he does is fix her hair with both hands. In the next scene, all the students are out on a hot summer day and they are asked for a class to draw in nature. Saya appears and tells the protagonist that the best thing for the heat is to eat something spicy, but they say no. Ironically, he likes something sticky and bitter. Although he probably refers to Nado, Kosaka arrives to take it away before Saya can do anything. Then the girlfriend is next to him drawing a tree that looks like a woman with her legs open, and later Rina appears while she's drawing Shizuku. Moments later, we see that Kosaka is posing for him, and when he sees her leaning against the tree, he suddenly begins to remember everything they have been through together and realizes that he loves her to such a degree that he says it out loud. She all blushes, but in the end, she gains strength and tells him that she loves him too. They both hold hands and stare at each other in love. After the credits, we see a small scene in which the boy shows her what he drew, and she gets upset because apparently she draws very badly. Later, as a conclusion to the hotel scene, it is already morning and the 2 young people leave the building. Haru comments that he is a loser since nothing happened. However, it starts to rain again, and this time she suggests that they take shelter in the building across the street, which apparently is also a hotel. But when you enter, there is a sign that says, "No one from here, he can leave unless something happens between the two." What ending? Now let's see what happens in the movie. We started the film with a brief recap of everything that happened after the credits, that is to say, how our protagonists were having a very pleasant afternoon on their way home. But it started to rain, so they had no choice but to take shelter instead. Kosaka, of course, ended up convincing him to go into that hotel for couples. Things seemed like they were finally going to end in something, but she fell asleep in the movie. However, it does not show us the information that they went out and it started to rain, but simply when they left from their room and trying to enter the corridor, they ended up in another very strange room where the sign that forced them to do something was precisely there. Otherwise, they would not be able to leave. Things get even weirder when suddenly a timer starts with only 60 minutes. The voice of a machine tells them that if they do nothing within the scheduled time, the man will have to learn the hard way from behind. What a strong situation. Faced with such a threat, our boy says that they should run out of there. But then the robotic voice from the room announces that they must pay for wanting to break the rules. The punishment causes some ties to come out that immediately hold Haru by all 4 extremities, and to his bad luck, a flying toy comes out that is about to ram him. His girlfriend says please not, that she will take the punishment, so other restraints hold them down and the toy heads towards her. Faced with such a situation, our hero shouts that please stop. They will have an exciting time without the need to be pressured. The first thing he does is try to remove the restraints that the machine put on his girlfriend, but when trying to do it, all he does is make the situation redder jot, and in fact, he ends up breaking the button and therefore leaving her without shirt. Things couldn't get any clearer, so she ends up saying that it's time, and he also knows that there's no reason to dwell on the matter anymore. They both think they've been dating for quite some time, that they love each other, and that it's time to let go. When they are already in bed together, ready to consume everything they need, the stuffed animals they bought yesterday fall off and put themselves in an awkward position. Ironically, this causes the machine in the room to detect that there was already an exciting time, so they can leave. To the astonishment of the young people, well, because in reality they have not done anything, a hole opens in the floor and both are expelled. Without knowing what happened or how they got outside, the young people wake up while our hero is carrying his girlfriend. For her part, she says that maybe it's okay to wait, but at least this has brought them closer together. Someone explains to me what happened here. Now we go to a day at school where the nurse says that they have to pay more attention to their physical education class. In this case, it is time to put a very special exercise, and for that she has brought a special assistant with her, Kosaka. She's going to be in charge of the activity, and as always to surprise us, she brings a vase in the shape of balls. Yes, that is what the male hangs from. She seems to make a couple of jokes about the importance of idolizing the male branch and even alludes to the traditional animal in Japanese folklore known as the tanuki. Once she reads the manual, since she had never really done this activity, everyone understands that they have to take papers out of the urn and do the activity. However, this is very confusing, as all the activities ask for the balls of the king of the game to be used. For example, the first activity says that the balls must balance, and another activity says that the balls must roll. In the end, our protagonist is afraid that they will do things to him, so he asks them to stop. When our protagonist falls on it, the last game that falls from the vase says that they should talk about the hard stick, so things seem to be going crazy. Fortunately, at that moment, the nurse enters and asks them why they haven't started any game yet, so she proposes another one in which she takes out a vase, but this time in the shape of a huge stick. Kosaka tells him that if he doesn't want to play the nurse's game, then he'll have to play his. When he asks what it's about, she tells him that sooner or later he'll find out, and that's all, friends. See you next time.